Secretary General, thank you so much for joining us on Bloomberg. It's always nice to see you, especially now in person. I have to tell you, congratulations for this announcement. You're going to be the central banker of Norway, joining soon. But of course, there are concerns that maybe there is a void here at NATO at a critical time. So the obvious question is, are you staying on this job until your very last day?
Yes, absolutely. For NATO, there is no change at all. I will be fully focused on my responsibilities here at NATO, and I will stay here until the end of my tenure, the 1st of October this fall. So for NATO, there is no change. I will be at the helm of NATO to the end of my tenure.
So for those that argue, this could leave a void that perhaps countries like Russia, China, this more in particular, we saw that statement from the two of them, could use and tap into, that's something that you would say, don't worry about it, that NATO has a boss until the last day.
Yes, absolutely, and there is no change because my tenure expired, will expire on the 1st of October, and that's still the case, and I will stay here until the 1st of October, and I will not leave before there's a new Secretary General in place, as the plan has always been.
And of course, I want to ask you about the statement that came out today from Russia and China. Of course, Vladimir Putin is in Beijing for the Olympic Games. Were you surprised by the language in the statement that essentially says it's the West that's creating a lot of tensions? So you specifically mentioned about the Pacific. They forget about what's happening in Ukraine. So you could argue it's conveniently forgetting, but...
Well, what we have seen over some time is that Russia and China are working more and more closely together in the diplomatic field, but also in the military field, meaning that they are operating more together, they have more exercises together. Just a few days ago, they had a joint naval exercise with also Iran. So, of course, this is something we follow and monitor. But as long as we stand together in NATO, North America and Europe, we are safe and we are strong because together we represent 50% of the world's military might and 50% of the world's economic might. So if anything, more Russian-Chinese cooperation just underlines the importance of NATO also for North America.
And your message to China and Russia on this, I guess, I mean, you're saying we're a big military force. Would you say the message here is handle this with care?
So our message is that we are a defensive alliance and we always look for diplomatic and political solutions. And that's also the case, for instance, when it comes to the Russian military buildup we now see in and around Ukraine with more and more combat-ready troops with heavy equipment, ammunition, and more units coming in. We see that combined with a very threatening rhetoric from the Russian side, and then we have the track record of Russia using force against Ukraine before. So there's a real danger, but we continue to seek a political solution, and we have invited Russia for talks and also made our proposals written and shared them with Russia, and we wait for their response.
And that response, there were some documents that were leaked in a newspaper this week. I wonder if you recognize the content of those documents. And the reason why I ask is because it really reflects everything that you've said in public. There was nothing hidden in those documents.
So we classified or we didn't make our proposals public when we sent them to Russia, just because we believe that any diplomatic success, a precondition for diplomatic success is confidentiality. So if we really want progress, if we really want to find a solution, we cannot do the talks and the negotiations in the media. We need to sit down and try to create some minimum of understanding, and then we will listen to the Russian concerns, but at the same time we will convey our positions, and then we should try to find a way forward.
And the reason why I asked you about the documents, and perhaps you mentioned confidentiality, a lot of people in Ukraine particularly, who are going through a very difficult situation, they worry that at one point, perhaps NATO, Russia, the United States are going to get in a room and decide what to do with the country. Confidentiality to you, what does it mean? Can there be a solution without Ukraine?
Also, we have consulted very closely with Ukraine, and we have shared our positions with Ukraine. Ukraine is a close and highly valued partner of NATO. And our message is that Ukraine is a sovereign, independent nation that has the right to make its own decisions. And the challenge and the problem with the Russian behavior is that they don't respect the sovereignty of Ukraine. NATO provides support to Ukraine. We help them also to enhance their ability for self-defense, to exercise and to demonstrate their sovereignty in face of the Russian threat.
And when you look at how this is presented in Russia, what the Russians argue is NATO is pushing Ukraine to join in, expand. This is going to trap us, and we're going to be surrounded by NATO forces. I know you're very keen on saying open doors for everyone. Everyone who wants to join can join. But in reality, what are the prospects of Ukraine joining NATO in the short term? And then the reason why I ask is because when you look at this, perhaps in the Russian media, it's always presented as this could be imminent, and they're doing this to trap us.
First, Russia is not surrendered by NATO. 6% of Russia's border is a border with a NATO country. Second, the idea that in a way Ukraine is a threat to Russia is absolutely wrong. Russia has the biggest land army in Europe. It's a nuclear power. It has invested heavily in new military equipment and capabilities over the last years. And they occupy a part of Ukraine, Crimea, and they control Donbas, the eastern part of Ukraine. So the aggressor is Russia, and therefore to say that Ukraine is a threat is to put the whole thing upside down. Let me also add that this is fundamentally not about NATO expansion, meaning that NATO in a way is forcefully moving east. That's wrong. This is about respecting the sovereign right of independent nations to choose their own path. We respect when a country wants to join NATO, and also we respect them if they don't want to join NATO. We don't want to return to an age of sphere of influence where big powers decided what small countries could do, and NATO has never forced any country into the NATO lines.
But sir, then how do you go forward here? Because what is clear is that what Russia wants, you're not going to give. And what you are saying could be a way to de-escalate. The Russians say that doesn't address any of our security concerns. So then what happens?
So we are ready to talk about a wide range of issues, and also to listen to the Russian concerns. We are ready to talk about arms control, missiles, nuclear weapons, mechanisms to have more transparency on military activities, and many other issues. And we have proven before that it is possible to make deals with Russia. We have arms control agreements banning whole categories of weapons, the intermediate range weapons. There are bilateral agreements between the United States and Russia on strategic long-range weapons. So it is possible. I also have my own experience from Norway, that we made agreements on energy and delimitation line in the Barents Sea and so on. So that's possible. But then we need to sit down and engage in good faith and go through the proposals, and that's exactly what NATO is proposing to Russia.
And of course, the Russians say Vladimir Putin has the documents. He has the NATO ones. He also has the American ones. Today, he's in China, of course, trying to send also perhaps a political message by joining the Chinese in the event. But I wonder, when are you expecting the Russians to respond to this?
Well, they have to respond when they are ready to respond.
There's no deadlines?
No, we are not setting a deadline, because we have time the time needed to sit down, because we are actually we haven't done anything in Ukraine. It's Russia that is responsible for significant ongoing military buildup. We almost every week we see, or even almost every day, we see new units coming with combat-ready troops, with advanced weapon systems, medical units, command and control. So, of course, this is a great concern, and we call on them to stop that, to de-escalate and sit down and engage in serious talks.
And you've said twice, we're seeing more and more. Is there a new count of troops that you have in your intel?
Well, we are getting intel almost regularly, several times a week, and we are following this very closely. We have, of course, NATO allies, but also NATO has capabilities that are monitoring what is going on, and we see not only in close the border to Ukraine and in Crimea, but we also now see in Belarus.
And how many in Belarus?
There we expect soon there will be 30,000 Russian troops, the biggest Russian military presence since the Cold War in Belarus. We see Spetsnaz, special operation forces. We see Iskander nuclear-capable missiles, short-range missiles. We see advanced air defense systems. So, of course, all of this together really is something which is of great concern, and that's the reason why there's a real danger for a Russian invasion, but that makes it even more important to also look for a political way forward.
And I also wonder, there had been reports that perhaps Russia is not just moving military equipment, but also blood supplies and everything that is medical that could actually mean they're ready for casualties. You have that information confirmed?
Yes, we have that information. The thing is that we have, first of all, we have all the combat troops, but we also have what we call enablers, all the kind of support you need if you're going to conduct a big military operation, with command and control, with logistics, with ammunition, with fuel, but also medical units. So it is this total picture which is becoming more and more serious that makes us concerned. And for us, this means that we need to send a message that they have to de-escalate. If they use force, there will be a high price to pay. Allies provide support to Ukraine so they can defend themselves. And then, of course, we are increasing the NATO presence in the eastern part of the alliance, US, UK.
But no NATO troops in Ukraine?
No NATO troops, no NATO combat troops in Ukraine. But, of course, we have more NATO troops in the eastern part of the alliance on NATO territory.
And, sir, just a final question. For the people of Ukraine, they hear the attack is imminent from the United States. Then President Zelensky says it's not. This is creating panic. Let's calm down. Then the Russians deny they have any plans to invade. What is your message as NATO? How likely is the attack? Because this is full paranoia for people in Ukraine every day.
There is no certainty, but there is a real danger. And the real danger is there because we see this military build-up, we see the threatening rhetoric, and we see and we know the track record of Russia. And if we put that together, of course, there is a danger we need to address, and that's exactly what we're doing.
And your message to Putin is stop it while you can. There's still a way forward.
Absolutely. De-escalate and sit down and talk.
Well, Secretary General, thank you so much. And as always, it's very nice to see you on Bloomberg.
Thank you so much for having me.